The scent of tea lingered in the loft, but Torin's voice was barely a whisper now. With the first prince's talent, taking Valor Hall would be a breeze. Duran let out an odd, dry cackle and rapped his knuckles on the table. My senior brothers got an eye for disciples. Never been wrong. A flicker of satisfaction crossed his eyes, cold and flat, before his voice dropped to a deadly chill. Those 3 shops, what happened? Don't worry, Master Duran. Torin ducked his head, quick to reassure. They ambushed our steward on the road, killed him. So they were in the wrong. Add your prestige, and they folded without a fight, merged right into the pavilion. Good, Duran nodded, his tone as flat as a squashed insect. That steward, take care of him at your convenience. With me around, what do we need Shu Mao's spirit pills for? Yes, Torin bobbed his head. Duran turned to the window. A sliver of light cut through, but the space around him stayed dark, the air thick with an invisible poisonous haze that warped and shimmered just on the edge of sight. He sneered, each word ground out. Shu Mao, ghost doctor's disciple, unbeatable in pill-making, ha. Let's see if his spirit pills are anything next to my venom pills. Torin's gaze hesitated for a split second, but he said nothing. A voice sounded from outside, trembling with nerves. Pavilion Master Torin. Torin's face darkened. He snapped, I said no interruptions. What part of that wasn't clear? The man outside was probably kicking himself, but he pushed through it, stammering out the report. Kael wanted to buy the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit. Torin waved a hand, his voice a thunderous growl. Tell him to piss off. Hold on. Duran raised a hand, a cruel smile playing at the edges of his mouth. Did he say, any price? Yes. Then let him have it. Duran's eyes flicked to the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit, its eerie light swirling. He seemed to measure it, like a poison bait he was just stashing with someone for a while. A meridian opening cultivator isn't going to raise any storms. He's just holding on to it for a few days. Got it. Torin caught on fast, hurrying to play along. Duran's voice was flat. Tell him no sale, exchange only. He wants the fruit. He brings a profound armament, an earth-tier martial art or better. Supervisor Wei's nods were silent, but his footsteps hurried away. The thud of his feet on the wooden stairs echoed down from the 5th floor, through the empty building, each step thudding down, heavy with intent, all the way to the 3rd floor. Back on the 3rd floor, Kael leaned close, his voice urgent but low. Little brother, you've got no use for that fruit right now. Why torture yourself, Look, there's a lot here that's better left unsaid. You need to watch your step. Kael caught the worry etched on his face, and something tugged inside him. Kael, you're stuck as a lowly servant here. And you're still finding time to fret over me. Kael paused, then smiled a bitter, thin smile. Being a servant isn't the worst. It's quiet and selling profound stones. At least it's honest work. Profound stones. Kael's gaze dropped to the heap of gray, dusty rocks in front of Kael. But before he could ask, Supervisor Wei's steps came down the stairs. Slow, deliberate, each click echoing with cold calculation and a sneer. Supervisor Wei appeared, empty-handed, that fake smile pasted on. Congratulations, little brother. Pavilion Master Torin says okay. The fruit can go. Kael stayed silent, waiting. Supervisor Wei locked eyes on him, a cunning flicker in his gaze, one profound armament or an earth-tier martial art at least. If you don't have it, you know where the door is. Kael couldn't stop himself. What? Supervisor Wei's gaze cut to him, sharp as a knife. Problem, Kael, you got something to say. Kaelan's jaw tightened, but he forced the words out. Chief Steward, you can't be serious. That fruit's worth maybe 1,000,000 origin crystals tops. A profound armament or earth-tier art. That's 10 times that. You'd scour all of Great Kai and never find one like that. Supervisor Wei roared, silence. You ungrateful wretch. How dare you question the Pavilion Master? He turned to Kael, a mocking smirk spreading. A minute ago, you said any price. So what now, when it's time to pay, you chickening out? If you can't pay, fine grab one of those profound stones from below. Buy it, crack it open. Who knows, you might get lucky. Find a treasure inside. Kaelan's fists went white at the knuckles. His lips trembled, but all that came out was a bitter sigh. But Kael didn't get angry. He just looked at those unremarkable stones for a moment, then flicked his wrist. In his palm rested a length of vine, glowing with an iridescent light. A purple crystal vine. The vine looked carved from amethyst, each tiny petal pulsing with a soft living light, like captured stars. Spirit energy rippled along its length, sending faint purple rings into the air. The stale atmosphere up here on the 3rd floor stirred silently in response. Supervisor Wei's eyes narrowed, greed coiled in their depths, fixed on that vine. Kael's voice was calm, almost cool. I'll pawn this purple crystal vine here for now. Give me half a day. I'll come back with something to trade for it. Supervisor Wei reigned in his secret glee, keeping up his act. He sneered, half a day, and if you vanish for good. What am I supposed to tell the pavilion master? Kael didn't argue. From his dimensional pouch, he pulled a fist-sized purple bud and tossed it to Supervisor Wei. Take this too. If I don't come back in half a day, it's yours. The bud was the unbloomed flower of a purple crystal vine, its spirit light restrained within, its worth. Easily 20,000 origin crystals. Supervisor Wei grabbed it, greed practically oozing from his eyes. He nodded, pleased. Fine, I'll be here waiting for your good news, little brother. Beside him, Kaelan sighed to himself. Even if this went without a hitch, that vine wasn't coming back. He knew it. Kael turned and left, Kaelan rushing to follow. As they walked away, Supervisor Wei laughed under his breath. A meridian opening cultivator with a profound armament, no way. Even Duran didn't have one. Kael cupped his hands in thanks. Brother Kaelan, I won't forget this. Kaelan opened his mouth, then closed it. He just couldn't get it. The same Kael who'd fought over a single origin crystal was now walking into a trap with a smile. Kael offered no explanation. He walked straight out of the Treasure Vault Pavilion and headed directly to the outer city. There, in a deserted, out-of-the-way corner, he stopped. Supervisor Wei was right. Kael was dead broke. No profound armament, no earth, tier art. But just because he didn't have them didn't mean no one else did. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and his mind dived deep. Deep inside him lay a treasure only he knew. Awareness sank through darkness, then blazed with light. The Sword Bastille loomed before him. Countless sword shadows hung in the void, their chilling intent drifting between the cages like living things. Each slow rotation hummed softly, their cold light cutting at the eyes. Before he could steady himself, an enraged roar erupted from deep within a cage. Son of a bitch. Kael was about to reply, but Shade's next words darkened his face. That little bastard, how's he still kicking? Kael's lip curled, and he flicked his mind. A streak of sword Kai shot out above the Bastille, cold light screaming as it blasted through Mordain. Black mist churned, rolling like boiling ink, and a pained groan leaked from inside. What the asterisk cough asterisk boy, it's you. Mordain's voice went weak. Say it. Kael stared into the churning fog, his voice cold. Go on, don't stop. Boy, Shade finally snapped. I'm stuck in this lightless hole, worse than any prison, so I cursed you a few times. So what? A cultivator needs a broad mind, not nitpicking every little thing. How are you supposed to advance if you keep this up? I need a martial art. Kael avoided the argument. For that friend of yours again, Shade scoffed. Kael's voice came flat, but waited. This time, it's for Folly. Shade's tone bristled with sudden, prickly possessiveness. That little girl, he'd long since claimed her as his own disciple. Kael laid out her condition, the words scraping out of him. She's got 3 months left. I need a martial art anything, to trade for the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit. Shade erupted. I told you ages ago, release me. If a heaven-defying bloodline like the Illusionbane Eye rots under your watch, the guilt's beyond all reckoning. Just give me a martial art, I'll handle the rest. Silence swallowed the cage. That was Kael's bedrock, everything else open, that one point locked tight. When Shade spoke again, the resentment curdled in his throat. Earth-tier martial arts, I don't have any. I only stock the best. The lowest rank in my collection is heaven-tier. Kael's eyes narrowed to slits. You're lying. A heaven-tier art exposed. The Treasure Vault Pavilion wouldn't just move on him. The whole Jade Pinnacle sect would tear the world apart to pin him down. He bit off each word. You want to burn me. Is there a difference? Shade spread his hands, a dismissive drawl. Earth, tier awful like that cramps my vision. The Sword Bastille shuddered. Over a dozen sword Kai snapped into existence, their edges bleeding ghostlight, the hum, a hive of hornets locking Shade from every angle. Shade registered none of it, his stubbornness a shield. The demon troops under my command once drilled in a low-grade earth, tier scrap called blood spirit art, utter filth, but if you insist. The cage held its breath. Across a sea of blade, shadows, 2 minds spat the same silent curse, asterisk bastard. Cheap mongrel, asterisk. A moment later, Shade surrendered the formula. Black fog churned and condensed within the cage, crimson runes peeling out like living veins, braiding in midair until they pressed into a dark red jade talisman. Along its surface, blood, hued lines pulsed to a slow, steady rhythm, each throb bleeding a chill, creeping wave of power. Kael's consciousness touched the blood talisman, and a needle of pure ice stabbed his brow. An invisible force wrenched his spirit backward. The Sword Bastille, the fog, the crimson glare tore away at a shattering speed, collapsing into a white void behind his eyes. When Kael's eyes snapped open again, he was back in the outer city, the sting in his forehead still burrowing like a frozen splinter. He rubbed the spot, and the corner of his mouth tugged upward. Deep within the Sword Bastille, a single curse squeezed through gritted teeth, that bastard craftier than a demon lord himself. Just wait, the day you've got nothing left to play with. We'll see if you still keep me caged. Kael pocketed the talisman and turned back for the Treasure Vault Pavilion. By the mound of profound stones, Kaelan's gaze kept leaping to the door, his fingertips fretting the hem of his sleeve raw. Opposite him, Supervisor Wei lazed in his seat, a cup of spirit tea cradled in his palm, steam snaking into the air. His eyes flicked over Kaelan with a cold, flat disdain even aunts know how to cling to life, and this fool was frittering his worry on someone else. The appointed hour struck. He set the teacup down, the porcelain base cracking against the table with a sharp clack, the amethyst vine bud already rested snug in his pouch, a tidy little side profit. He'd half turned to leave when Kaelan's shout burst from behind. "Little brother!" Kael's silhouette filled the doorway, Supervisor Wei's body hitched, and a warm, oiled smile plastered itself across his face. He advanced a few quick steps. "Little brother, true to your word, earlier I was blind and careless, gave you some offense. I trust you won't hold it against me. Not a syllable about the flower bud." Kael raised the jade talisman, its surface swirling with a secret, shifting light. "I brought the goods." A shrewd glint sparked in Supervisor Wei's eyes, and his hand darted forward. Kael's wrist flicked back, and the talisman disappeared into his sleeve. "Where's my end of this?" "One moment, please." The smile on Wei's face deepened, and he spun to hurry upstairs. On the 5th floor, Duran sat rigid. Duran had stormed off in fury. Word of the first prince's defeat at Valor Hall by some nameless nobody had hit like ice water dumped into searing oil, bristling his every hair and WH. Isker, Duran's brows knitted tight, his knuckles rapping the armrest as he breathed out the peril of their position. Supervisor Wei's voice cut through the door. "Pavilion master, that brat's back." Duran's chair legs shrieked against the floor. His heart slammed against his ribs. He has it. Still in his hand, he wants to inspect the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit first. Show it to him. Duran's hand swept out, his greed now stripped completely bare, eyes on him every second. Someone who can pull out an tier divine ability has a background that runs deep. If it turns out he's got no real backers, you know the play. His voice sank, the final word ground between his teeth. Wei acknowledged and withdrew. Down in the main hall, he dismissed Kaelan with a few curt words and steered Kael into a private chamber. The door shut, and cold leaching from the stone walls wrapped around them. A wooden case sat on the table. Wei's fingertip flipped the lid open, and a dark, delicate fragrance bled out, the air congealing as though squeezed by an invisible fist, heavy enough to press on the lungs. Kael's pupils shrank. Nestled deep in the case lay the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit, its surface churning with layer upon layer of living deep, purple light, coiling into a tiny vortex. The instant his divine sense brushed it, a dizzying buzz filled his skull, 1,000 murmurs pulling from the vortex's heart, as if to drag his soul free. He felt no alarm, just a surge of joy. This would truly serve Folly well. He reached out, his fingertip grazing the wooden rim. A chill, unmistakable tremor bit from the wood into his skin, crawling up his finger bone and through his arm. He steadied his breath, completed his inspection, then flipped his palm and handed over the jade talisman. The deal closed. Supervisor Wei carried the talisman upstairs and returned moments later, pushing the wooden case to Kael. "Pavilion Master Duran has verified it. This is yours." Kael pocketed the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit but stayed rooted. He opened his palm, and my purple crystal vine. Wei's expression froze, then cracked into a shallow grin. Little brother jests. "I've run myself ragged on your account. A small token for my trouble is only natural." His sleeve brushed deliberately over the dimensional pouch at his waist, the fabric whispering against its mouth. Kael's gaze scraped across that sleeve, his tone flat. "That doesn't work. The purple crystal vine holds real value." "Heh, why shed all pretense? What slides into my pouch never slides back out. Disagree. Take it up with Pavilion Master Duran yourself. Just brace for the consequences." Kael held still for a beat, then shifted track. "Fine, I'll drop the purple crystal vine, but I'll take something else out of the treasure vault as compensation." "What?" "Profound stones." Wei's eyes rolled, and his bunched shoulders sagged in relief. Those worthless stones had gathered dust for years. A dog wouldn't touch them. "Perfect to fob off on this bumpkin." He stuffed down his contempt and fawned. "Little brother has a sharp eye." Profound stones hold a cosmos inside, never mind a purple crystal vine. You could pry a spirit treasure out of one. That's perfectly ordinary. He stepped aside to lead the way, sneering inwardly the whole while. Asterisk idiot. You couldn't squeeze a fleck of stone dust out of them, let alone a treasure. Asterisk. Near the profound stone pile, a cultivator had scooped up a fist-sized chunk. He turned it over and over, fingertips tracing the rough stone crust as fine sand sifted down. From deep within the stone's shell, something like a wisp of ancient aura flickered so faint it was nearly nothing. That hooked his heart for a breath before dissolving, leaving his face knotted with hesitation and struggle. Kael watched him, hope caught in his throat. Honored guest, that one's priced at 10,000. The cultivator flung the stone back onto the pile like it had seared him. 10,000, just rob me outright. Kaelan's heart lurched. He leaned forward, his voice pitching upward against his will. Honored guest, please, calm down, 7/10 no, 8/10 off, please, just think about it. Kael didn't hurry. He walked the main street at an easy pace, heading not for the inn but straight for the empty wild roads outside the city. His spiritual sense spread wide, a silent web. That thin, cold presence behind him stayed fixed in place. Supervisor Wei had taken the bait. Greed really did rot a man's bones. A ghost of a smile tugged at the corner of Kael's mouth. He let the fool keep tailing him, playing the clueless mark all the way to the dusty city gate arch. A figure lurched out from a side alley and stumbled right into his path. Kael, the man's chest, heaved like a blown bellows, sweat streaking down his forehead to slap the gray, blue flagstones. The drops hit hard enough to kick up tiny puffs of dust stone powder ground, fine under the pressure of spiritual energy pushed past its limits. Little brother, Kaelan's voice scraped raw, the whites of his eyes shot through with red from a dead sprint. Kael stopped, his gaze settled on Kaelan's face. Brother Chen, what's this about? Supervisor Wei, he means to move against you. Kael blinked once, then broke into a smile. You ran yourself ragged just to warn me. Kaelan's head bobbed hard, his throat jerking as sweat trickled past his temples and bled into his collar. Little brother, you have to be careful. Kael's eyes drifted past Kaelan's shoulder, sweeping lazily toward the street's far end. Brother, do you realize Supervisor Wei already has eyes on you right now? Ah, the blood dropped clean out of Kaelan's face. His lips shook, and he fought every instinct screaming at him to look back. Regretting it already. A little. Kael reached out and clapped him on the shoulder. Light, no force behind it, but the grip settled like iron plate. Let's go. Kaelan's face crumpled. He stood frozen. Wind keened through the gate passage, a low mournful howl. Go? Go where? Out of the city, Kael let out a sigh, a note of resignation threading through. Brother, you didn't seriously think someone could snatch the purple crystal vine from me and just walk away, did you? That's 20,000 origin crystals. Kaelan's mind went blank. His mouth opened and shut, no words coming. In a lie, for death moment, the man was still hung up on 20,000 origin crystals. Before his brain could catch up, Kael's 5 fingers clamped down. A colossal force bit straight into the bone. Wind exploded in his ears, grey walls, withered trees. The packed dirt road all ripped past his vision in blurred streaks. The air turned solid. A curtain his body punched through. The city gate shrank to a speck behind them. In the street's shadows, Supervisor Wei stepped out from under a shop awning, unhurried. His face was dark as old iron left in water. Inside his sleeve, his fingers twisted around a narrow-necked porcelain bottle bone, eroding powder. Flesh melted on contact, the throat sealed shut at the first sight of blood. His gaze shot through the gate arch and locked onto the 2 figures, receding at breakneck speed. A cold glint flickered. Kael, you treacherous rat. Ran to warn him, did you? Fine, I'll bury you both together. Spares me the trouble of hunting you down later. His robe stirred faintly, and he glided out, soundless. Within the first prince's manor, past the front courtyard, and into the inner halls, a long, creeping shadow fell. Servant women moved on tiptoe, their breath drawn so thin it barely stirred the air. One wrong sound, and the master's mood inside that sealed chamber would snap. Inside, Duran stood with his hands clasped, face a mask of shame, neck bent so low it nearly folded into his chest. Nero Ya, Ember, and Kael flanked him on either side, not daring to breathe too loud. At the head seat, Duran sat ramrod straight, a sword thrust slantwise into the earth. His gaze was far off, he said nothing. The silence pressed down, heavy and swollen, waiting to burst. Marshal Uncle, Bran's voice finally scraped out, raw enough to chafe the ears. This whole affair began because of me. I was too useless, too weak to defeat him. And now I've delayed Master's grand design. Duran's eyes turned slowly and settled on him. Nephew, Do you realize how much you've lost with that single defeat? Marshal uncle, what do you mean? Duran didn't answer straight away. His gaze lingered on Bran's face for 2 slow breaths. All these years, your master has been working in the shadows, maneuvering to secure you a place in the Azure Cloud Pavilion. Before I left, the matter had already taken shape. That person had agreed to give you a trial, a chance to prove yourself. What? Bran's whole body jolted, his cayenne blood surged, veins bulging along his neck. He could barely get the words out. Azure Cloud Pavilion, that hidden realm that only absorbed the true geniuses of the Jade Pinnacle sect, and he, Brand, actually had a slim hope of entering. Pity? Duran's tone sharpened, a blade cleaving a zither string. You failed to seize it. With your foundation within the 10 Kingdoms Valor Hall, no one aside from that freak of Great Chew would dare claim certain victory over you. Yet you lost to a nameless nobody. If he had a special physique, that might be one thing, but he's just a mortal vessel. The Azure Cloud Pavilion matter has become thorny. Bran's face flushed the color of pig liver, then drained bloodless in an instant. His lips quivered. No words came, his organs churned. Why had he accepted Kael's duel in the first place? Sensing the dangerous shift, Nero stepped forward. Elderdu, you cannot lay all the blame on your highness. That boy is anything but simple. I crossed hands with him. His spiritual power's depth is the most profound I've ever witnessed. Even cultivators at the 5th or 6th layer of the spirit-gathering realm might not match him, and his connection to the Murong family seems far from ordinary. The Murong family? Duran let out a cold scoff, his eyes empty of warmth. I care not for the Murong family, nor for his strength. The only thing I care about is your master's plan. And now, what is to be done? Marshal uncle, Brand ground his teeth, the sound grating loud. Give me one more chance. Grant me a spirit pill, and within days I will break through into the spirit-gathering realm. Then I'll wash away this disgrace and fulfill master's design. A spirit pill can be given. Duran's face was blank, his tone flat as a ledger. But what if you lose again, even setting that aside? Say you win, you have already lost once. The crowd's first impression has soured. Their regard for you is nothing like before. On what grounds would you then smoothly seize control of the Valor Hall? Bran's face burned crimson, veins pulsing at his temples. Elderdu, Nero stepped in again, voice lowered. I may have a method worth attempting. Duran glanced sidelong at him, chin lifting a fraction. Speak. Nero suppressed the surge in his chest and picked each word with care. Your Highness's reputation suffered a blow in this defeat, but he still has you backing him, and that senior of the Ascendant sect. If you simply show your face before the crowd and display a fraction of your power, then not even those students or instructors, nor vice, directors Wu and Feng, will dare entertain any scheming. Once your Highness breaks through his current realm and utterly defeats, or kills, that wretch, he'll recover most of his prestige. With you supporting him, holding the Valor Hall will be easy. Duran's gaze rested on his face for 3 breaths, appraising. What is your name? Nero, Duran nodded slowly. The deep crease at the corner of his mouth eased. You're sharp, a talent. When your master's plan reaches fruition, I will record a grand merit in your name. Thank you, Elderdu, thank you. Nero bowed again and again, voice trembling with fervent heat. Nearby, Ember and Kalon's eyes had reddened with envy, their throats bobbed, but no words came out. To earn this man's favor meant a future without a ceiling. Duran rose slowly. The rustle of fabric was a thin whisper, and the air itself thickened, like an invisible palm pressing down. He glanced at Brand and said, without inflection, approved. Beyond the city walls, deep within the dense forest, sunlight, shredded by layers of leaves, scattered a patchwork of cold white on the ground. The woods lay heavy with silence. Even the birds had shut up. Kael stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his robes still in the windless air. Kaelon stayed at his side, throat bobbing, a fine sheen of sweat beading on his brow. The atmosphere was thick, brittle. Footsteps crushed the dead quiet. Supervisor Wei pushed through the underbrush and burst into the clearing, his face carved with malice. His gaze locked onto Kael, first a flicker of surprise, then a savage grin twisted his lips. So that's where you're hiding. Kaelon couldn't help himself. His voice dropped low. Little brother, Supervisor Wei. He's at the 3rd layer of the essence condensation realm. Kael tilted his head, looking rather puzzled. And what does that have to do with me taking back the purple crystal vine? Kaelon choked. Of course, it had everything to do with it. But before he could speak again, Supervisor Wei was already advancing in long, purposeful strides, spirit light flickering in his palm, killing intent bare and undisguised. Hand over the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit. Kael sighed. I already paid 10 times its price. You've made a huge profit. Still, that's not enough. Do you have to push this to the end? Supervisor Wei's laugh was a grating rasp. Blame yourself for being weak and flaunting a priceless treasure in broad daylight. Supervisor. Kael choked down his terror and lunged forward. This whole thing. Kael, Supervisor Wei's eyes cut sideways, cold as a blade. You treacherous little shit. The pavilion master gave the order to clean you up ages ago. No loose ends. You really are a thankless cur. Can't be tamed, can't be trusted. The blood drained from Kael's face. His lips stuttered. Clean me up. Why, I've broken my back in the Treasure Vault Pavilion. No great deeds, sure, but I've bled for it. You want to know why? Supervisor Wei exploded into motion. A palm strike crashed forward, tearing through a dozen zhang in a single breath. The air let out a muffled boom. Dead leaves spun up into a stinging vortex. The razor, sharp palm wind came roaring in, thick with the sweet-rot stench of decaying foliage. A sliver of killing intent flickered through Kael's eyes. He swept a hand backward and shoved Kael clear several zhang safe. In the same breath, his sword left its sheath. The ring of steel still hung in the air when his cultivation base erupted, thunderous. A profound spiritual pressure, so dense it felt nearly solid, radiated from his body and crushed outward. Leaves ripped up from the ground, spinning like blades. For dozens of zhang in every direction, the atmosphere seized, as if an invisible giant hand had slammed down, heavy and suffocating. Asterisk crack, asterisk. Fissures split the bark of nearby trunks, each thick as a rice bowl. The spiritual pressure settled like a mountain, folding itself into place. Kael had hit the dirt some distance away. His face was ash, his heart clenched as though a fist had reached into his chest and squeezed. He could barely drag in a breath. Asterisk this. This is monstrous. Asterisk. Across from him, Supervisor Wei's pupils shrank to pinpricks. This spiritual power was absurd, deep. Far, far beyond someone just stepping into the acupoint opening realm. He'd been played. The brat had been playing weak this whole time, baiting the arrogant right into his trap. And now barely a few zhang separated them, no retreat, no escape. The scent of death pricked the back of his skull like an icy needle. Die, Supervisor Wei bet everything. He yanked a sword from his storage ring and poured spiritual energy into it in a frenzied flood. He never finished. Brilliant white swordlight materialized out of empty air. Sword Kai tore across the sky, a keen, piercing hiss, shredding the silence. It sounded like something ripping through layer after layer of air, leaving behind white trails that lingered and refused to fade. Fast, too fast for the naked eye to grab hold of. Supervisor Wei felt a sudden chill punch through his chest. The pain only registered a heartbeat later. A transparent tunnel of blood pierced clean through his torso, its edges impossibly precise. The blood, delayed by half a breath, suddenly gushed. Warm liquid carrying the rust, wheat bite of iron, spattered down onto the dead leaves with a soft, pattering rustle. His spiritual energy collapsed in an instant. His knees buckled and slammed into the dirt, gouging shallow depressions. His eyes, fierce just a moment ago, mudded with confusion, then plunged into bottomless terror. What was that? A long sword came to rest on his shoulder. The edge caught the light, returning a piercing, icy gleam. Kael's voice dropped from above, placid as still water. You want an answer, I'll tell you in your next life. Words thrown right back at him, every syllable heavy as a stone. No, Supervisor Wei shuddered, the will to live scorched through his guts like wildfire. Don't kill me. Where is my purple crystal vine? I'll give it here. He fumbled frantically, stripping the storage ring from his finger and thrusting it up with both hands. His knuckles trembled like dry twigs in a hard wind. Spare my life. I've scraped together a small fortune over the years. Let me walk away and it's all yours. Everything. Kael took the ring and swept it with his divine sense, over 300,000 origin crystals, a batch of rare spirit materials. And the purple crystal vine, sitting inside perfectly intact. Seems you've squeezed out quite a lot of grease. It's yours, take all of it. Just let me go, please, all right. Answer me. Kael's tone didn't shift. Whose idea was the ambush? The pavilion master, Duran, it was Duran. The words practically ripped themselves from Supervisor Wei's throat. And Elder Duran, yes, Duran gave the orders too. They wanted me to eliminate Kael and grab the Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit on the way back. A short distance away, a numb shock punched through Kaelan's chest. His whole body went cold and slack. So he'd been marked for death from the start. Kael's eyes narrowed. This is far from over. Supervisor Wei's face turned the color of wet clay. He kowtowed desperately. I've told you everything I know. It was all the pavilion master's doing. It's got nothing to do with me. Nothing. Just let me go, and I'll... My affairs, Kael said, looking down, "Ought to remain confidential for now." A wild, desperate joy exploded in Supervisor Wei's eyes. "Yes, yes, I understand. Confidential for now. No, forever confidential." Kael nodded. "Good." Asterisk shing asterisk. The sword flashed once, clean, neat. The head tumbled. As it rolled, those eyes still held the ecstatic relief of someone who just slipped free of the noose. The corners of the mouth remained frozen in that pleasing, radiating little arc. On the blade, a single drop of blood gathered slowly, then slid down the edge. It traced a thin line of dark red through the air before striking the dead leaves without a sound. Soft, like a punctuation mark signaling an abrupt end. Kael sheathed his sword. He didn't spare the corpse another glance. He turned and walked toward Kaelan, his face already easing back into its earlier nonchalance. "Old rule, old brother." He gave the storage ring a shake. "I'm not splitting the spoils." Kaelan's lips moved. It took a long, stretched-out moment before he managed a smile, bitter right down to the marrow. "Let's go." "Go where?" His voice came out parched. "The Treasure Vault Pavilion. I can never set foot there again." Kael clapped him on the shoulder. The force was light, but carried a steadying weight that settled the bones. "Naturally, I'll see about finding you a better position." Dr. Zhu's affairs were his affairs, and Kaelon had gotten dragged into this mess because of it. He couldn't just leave the man to fend for himself. At that same moment, across every corner of Valor Hall, from the students to the instructors, from the outer courtyards to the main halls, an invitation lay silent on every desk. Deep crimson paper, searing gold lettering, the undersigned name blazed. Brand. Sandalwood incense coiled in thin spirals through the private chamber. Murong River listened, eyes shut, as the man in black finished his report. His fingertips tapped a slow rhythm on the table. A laugh broke from him. No wonder. He shook his head, still carrying traces of fire essence. He crossed hands with Brand. "I was careless. It never crossed my mind." His eyes snapped open. A second-tier Meridian opening realm defeats a ninth-tier fire spirit body. He's holding something extraordinary. The young lady's judgment outpaces mine. The black-clad man hesitated. His voice dropped half a notch. "There's something else." "Speak." Murong River flicked his hand. "Don't tell me." He went and dismantled Valor Hall. "That, he didn't." The man faltered. "Only, he chose male as his instructor." Asterisk crack, asterisk. The violet clay cup in Murong River's palm spider, webbed with hairline fractures, tea seeped through the cracks, silent, steady. The easy smile on his face froze solid. "What male? How did he?" His expression shifted. He didn't move, but the space around him rippled. A hemisphere of translucent waves bloomed soundless beneath his feet. His robes billowed. Where he'd stood, only an afterimage remained, hanging half a breath before the wind scattered it. The hall stood vast and empty. Candlelight cast wavering shadows on the walls. And then Murong River was simply there, stepping out of nothing before the air had time to knit itself shut. Kael's brow quirked. The old fox had lost his composure. In all his time here, he'd never seen that look on this man's face. 3 parts urgency, 7 parts disbelief. "Senior," Kael cupped his fists, voice level, "my thanks for this." "You got the item?" "I did." Kael lifted the storage ring on his finger. It gleamed cold and ghostly under the candles. So quickly, Murong River blinked. His voice went sharp. "What price did you pay?" "Tenfold." Tenfold. A piercing glint cut through Murong River's eyes as they settled on Kael. This kid pinched every coin. He'd asked if lodgings were free before checking in. A Duskfallen Spirit-Fruit can't always be bought even with Origin Crystal, so where did he get Origin Crystal? Kael offered nothing. Murong River didn't pry. "Senior," Kael stepped aside and pulled Kaelan forward. "Do you mind helping me with a small favor?" Him, Murong River's gaze, swept over like a cold blade. "Who is he?" Kaelan froze rigid. The Murong family, in all of Imperial Capital, there was only one Murong family, the one that even the royal house stepped aside for. His mind roared. That name that had torn through Imperial Capital days ago, the one who had made Nero Liat kneel in the street, was actually outrageous. The furious bellow jolted Kaelan awake. Murong River's sneer bounced off the walls. "I thought he simply lacked shame. I never imagined such bottomless greed. A tenfold price still can't stuff his gullet. What do you say?" He looked at Kael. "Want me to make a move, help you slaughter him?" The air squeezed tight. Kael stayed silent a moment, then shook his head. "Senior, I don't yet want to use the token of Murong Yan." "Fine." The fury on Murong River's face receded like a tide. The killing intent evaporated completely. He turned to Kaelan. "Your name is Kaelan." "Why, yes." Kaelan's tongue knotted. Not bad, Murong River nodded. A trace of laughter touched his tone, loyalty and spine. Torin is blind. Kaelan stood there, lips trembling. He was being praised by the chief steward of the Murong family. Every word burned like a branding iron, searing his mind blank. Murong River mused a moment, then spoke, casual as anything. The apothecary branch in Great Yan lacks a head manager. Go with Kaen Liu. He'll teach you the protocols first. Begin your post tomorrow. Kaelan's brain simply stopped. A chief manager in the Murong family, a position countless people begged for, had landed on his head as lightly as a feather. Brother, Kael clapped his shoulder. Afraid it's not enough weight? No, no, no. Kaelan shook his head violently, his eyes reddening. Thank you, little brother. Thank you, Murong steward. He understood all of this came from Kael. Kaen Liu led Kaelan away. The man's steps drifted, barely touching the ground. Murong River watched that receding back and sighed. You've got a warm heart. Good men shouldn't be trampled like that, Senior. Well said. Senior, Kael lifted his eyes. You're also an upright man. You've never used the token of Murong Yan to coerce me. No need for flattery. Murong River smiled, narrow and knowing. Merely clan rules, though. If you truly want me to act, you'd still need the token of Murong Yan. Their gazes met. The corners of both mouths quirked with an almost imperceptible smile. Two old foxes, two young foxes. Senior, I'll go see Folly. Oh, right. Murong River's expression turned oddly strained. Did you actually choose male as your instructor? Kael's scalp prickled. Yes. Murong River spoke only 2 words. Take care. The candlelight in the celestial chamber swayed soft and low. Folly lay curled on the bed, a faint glisten of drool at the corner of her lips. Her breathing came slow and even. Her face was a picture of innocent slumber. Kael reached out and gently stroked her head. The moment his fingers brushed her hair, the oppressive shadows weighing on his heart receded like a retreating tide. Folly's lashes fluttered. She opened her eyes. Young master. She launched herself up and clung to him, her arms locked tight around his waist, like a drowning soul clutching driftwood. What's wrong? Young master, I dreamed again. Kael's heart sank. The 3rd time, Shade's voice erupted in his mind. The illusion bane eye at full mastery, perceives past and future, understands all causality. What did you dream? So many people. Folly lifted her face. Her eyes were hazy with mist. So many people hunting young master. Her voice came faint, like dream. Talk. The sky was all black, and the color of blood crawled across it, fast. People surged in like tides, wave after wave, too many to count. Kael's breath seized. I got really angry, Folly continued, so I glared at them fiercely, and golden light burst from my eyes so bright, and then I fell asleep. She clutched his robe, desperate. When I woke up, young master was gone. Silence. The girl in his arms trembled. Kael drew a breath. He suppressed the storm churning in his chest. Just a dream, he said, voice steady. Don't take it to heart. I promise we won't be separated. He looked down into Folly's eyes. Silly girl, dream or future, in this life, you're not going anywhere. Even if the dream is true, even if you leave me, he would scour every corner of the world to find her and bring her back. Hungry, let's get you something delicious. Okay, Folly's brow furrowed. She stared at him, fixed and unblinking. Young master, why is there a layer of black Kai on you? Black Kai, Kael froze. An image flashed through his mind, that unsettling sensation when he'd chosen male as his instructor. Gloomy, bleak, like something clinging to his skin. No, the legend of the Bane Star. His expression shifted, but he forced a smile. Look again, maybe you're mistaken. No, Folly shook her head solemn. Her gaze was clear as water. It's a layer of black Kai, quite faint, seems not too harmful. A breath finally escaped Kael's chest. Not too harmful was good enough. As for Valorhall, he would sooner die than set foot there again. The farther from that star of calamity, the better. Folly's gaze dropped to his hand. Young master, you have a storage ring too. Kael's heart stirred. He sent a thread of spiritual energy into the ring. A profound stone materialized in his palm. It was an irregular prism, its surface covered in ancient, almost sentient patterns like dried veins. Its touch was not merely cold, it was glacial, like marrow, ice excavated from 10,000 feet beneath the earth. At the stone's core, a subtle energy pulsed, slow and steady, the heartbeat of a slumbering beast. Wispy luminescence flickered once within the lines, then died. Kael extracted the fist-sized profound stone from the ring and held it out. Folly, take a look, is there anything inside? Folly leaned in. Her pupils shimmered with faint crystalline light, invisible to others, but in her eyes, the profound stone's outer layer dissolved into a gray-white mist screen. Behind it, deep within, a dark silhouette lay dormant. She tilted her head. There's something black in there. I don't know what it is. Kael hesitated no more, his 5 fingers clenched. Asterisk crack, asterisk. The stone shell split with the sound of snapping bamboo. Powder sifted down. Through his fingers slipped a thread of faint spiritual light. It flickered and died, so dim it might never have existed. When he opened his hand, a thumb-sized piece of dull, lustreless iron lay quiet in his palm. Its shape was broken, a missing fragment of some spirit artifact, perhaps. He glanced at Folly, his heart surged. This time, they might be in for a real fortune. Just as he moved to lead her out, Kayan Liu's voice came from the outer room. Little brother, Eknop 18, Eve's kid is here. Kael released Folly's hand. He flicked his sleeve to release the barrier. Duran strode in first, where he carved deep into his face. Brother Gu, you left so suddenly earlier. Did something happen? Fatty followed behind. He swept a glance around the room and curled his lip. Is this it? The last to enter was Steward Lai. His face was black as the bottom of a pot. Fatty's venomous tongue had crushed him all the way here, stewing him in bile. Now he wouldn't speak a single word. Folly tugged at Kael's sleeve, her voice a whisper that somehow carried to everyone. Young master, 7th prince, he seems to have that black Kai too. Duran stiffened. Kael's face stayed blank. After months with Mail, of course he did. Folly whirled on Fatty, eyes snapping wide. He has it too, and it looks like he's got more than you and the 7th prince combined. Fatty's grin solidified into a grimace. Though, Folly's gaze landed on Steward Lai. He's clean. His face is just naturally that dark. Steward Lai's expression somehow darkened further. Fatty forced a laugh, the sound wobbling. Little girl, what kind of nonsense is that? Black Kai, stop messing around. Folly shook her head, her tiny face dead serious. I think you're going to die. Young miss, Fatty finally snapped. His human tribulation had been eating at him day and night. Her words drove right into the wound. His knees almost buckled, voice splintering. I'm begging you, just once, say something good. Joran's brow creased. Brother Gu, what is Miss Folly talking about? Kael wasn't about to explain. Nothing. Folly just woke up. She's still groggy. Don't take it to heart, by the way. From now on, we keep our distance from Instructor Mail. A jolt ran through them all. Fatty's instincts flared. No way, you're not hiding this from Pang Yi. She knows something, I can tell. Aya, Folly rushed to fix it, flustered. I was wrong. No Black Kai, you won't die. Fatty looked ready to actually cry. Steward Lai watched from the side, a thin, satisfied twitch pulling at his lips. When Kael said nothing more, Duran didn't push, just said, if you need help, say the word. Indeed, Steward Lai nodded. Make any request, and I will stake my life on it. Kael's chest warmed, but he shook his head. This is something you can't help with. I won't drag you both down. Everyone got it. Folly's affliction was flaring again. The soul, deficiency illness, had baffled even the divine healer, Xu Mao. Kael, who'd cured Joran's extreme cold, was helpless here. It was worse than they'd ever imagined. Fatty wasn't giving up. He fired off more questions, but Kael ignored him completely. He took Folly and Duran by the hand and led them straight out the door to explore the streets. Fatty gritted his teeth and followed. Out on the long avenue, Folly clutched a chicken leg in each hand. Grease shined around her lips as she chewed, her eyes curving into happy crescents. Not far behind, Fatty trudged along, listless. Haven't you seen enough? What's worth admiring in a dump like this? Once Folly had had her fill of fun, Kael stopped. Time to hunt for treasure. Treasure hunting? Fatty's mouth twitched like he'd swallowed a bug. Here, there's not a fart's worth of treasure to be found. Did I ask you to follow? Fatty shut his mouth. He'd endure. Duran and Steward Lai, on the other hand, were intrigued. Everyone present knew Kael never moved without a reason. After a few meandering turns, Kael stopped in front of a shop. The Treasure Vault Pavilion. The instant Phelan spotted Kael, he recognized him and hurried over, a smile plastered on. This guest had caught Supervisor Wei's eye, before definitely a hidden dragon, a distinguished patron. Phelan sharpened every wit he had, turning on the oily courtesy. Esteemed patron, you've returned. Kael pointed at Duran. Attend to him. Phelan squinted, then his eyes lit up. The 7th prince, Steward Lai, not one honored patron, but 3 Fatty got ignored automatically. In a corner, a pile of profound stones lay discarded, furred with dust. Their shells were grimy, and under the spirit lamps they didn't catch the faintest gleam. Folly, Kael jerked his chin at the heap of broken, looking stones. Take a look, any treasure in there. Folly swept her gaze across, a grey-white mist. Veil spread over her pupils again. Inside, most of the profound stones were dead black, lifeless. Only one, a rough head. Sized chunk held a spark of precious radiance deep within, flickering like a cold star. Yes, she pointed at the head. Sized profound stone, quiet. Inside that one, seems like there's a treasure. Kael's heart surged. He'd only meant to try his luck, had even prepared to scour every shop in the city. Never expected results right here in the Treasure Vault Pavilion. Remembering Pavilion Master Torin's greed and ruthless ways, he laughed to himself. This time, you'll bleed plenty. From a distance, Joran saw the two whispering and pointing at the profound stone pile, and his heart lurched. You can't be serious. Kael was already speaking to Phelan. This profound stone. How many origin crystals? The hall's noise died. People turned, staring at them oddly. Even Fatty couldn't watch, muttering, the hell. This is treasure hunting. Phelan's smile lines bloomed the kind of welcome you give a fat lamb hopping onto the chopping block. Sir, this profound stone is priced at 50,000. Without a word, Kael turned to walk out. Hey, Phelan panicked, scrambling after him. Sir, please stay. The price is negotiable. 20% off, no, 30%. I'll give it to you at 30% off. His face was thick with desperation, his frantic tone mirroring his earlier fawning. If Kael walked, that heap of rubble might never sell. Kael stopped. He raised a hand, pointing at the massive man. High profound stone beside it. What about this one? Phelan gave him a careful look, his voice tightening. 300,000. Joran's heart sank. It's over. You call this a little fun. This is just losing all control. Steward Lai curled his lip. Let's be clear. This household doesn't have that many origin crystals. Kael's gaze was cool, fixed on Phelan. Both stones. Real price. Phelan felt the weight of that stare, a faint tightness squeezing his chest. He gritted his teeth, thrusting out 5 fingers. Half price. Both stones, half price, no lower. Fatty stepped forward and slammed his meaty palm on the counter with a crack. Done. Settled. Both stones, half price. Kael smiled. Dead silence, the crowd's jeers choked off in their throats. A strange fragrance cut through the noise. The Treasure Vault Pavilion, roaring moments before, now still enough to hear a pin drop. In Kael's fingers, the jade vial was mottled and ancient, but faint wisps of pale golden mist rose visibly from its mouth. The scent wasn't overpowering, but it swept through every cultivator like a phantom hand, violently stirring their spiritual energy. My bottleneck, it cracked, someone shrieked. Muffled grunts followed. Several people shuddered, faces flushing scarlet. Under that single whiff, the shackles binding their cultivation for years loosened on their own. Spiritual energy rampaged through meridians, nearly forcing breakthroughs on the spot. The air rippled, centered on Kael, a transparent ring of distortion spread outward, silently shoving the clutter on the shelves half an inch back. It's not waste elixir. Joran's throat bobbed, pupils snapping to pinpoints. He was closest, felt it sharpest. The nearly extinguished remnant soul inside him actually flickered, stirred by the potency. None of the countless life, prolonging treasures he'd swallowed over the years had ever provoked that. Beside him, Steward Lai's expression shifted. He reached out instinctively to steady Joran, only to find his own fingers trembling. Across from them, Steward Ma, who'd been giving hollow comfort moments earlier, had his fake smile frozen. His gaze locked on the jade vial, greed and deep regret flashing through his eyes. This esteemed guest, Steward Ma lunged forward a step, voice cracking. This elixir is extraordinary. You must be careful. Before he could finish, Savage Kai exploded from the back of the crowd. A mountainous shade burst through, tossing people aside like a meat cannonball, blood, stench and wind rushing for Kael's face. Brat, hand that elixir over for Pang Yi to taste. It was that fatty surnamed Tian. Bloodshot eyes, thick palm wrapped in gale, force Kai, fingers swelling to twice their size, nails extending an inch and gleaming with a sinister, dark sheen of venomous claw strike. Killing, intent fully bare. You dare? Joran's voice came a beat too late. His true essence was badly damaged, his body far slower than his spiritual sense. The poison claw hung inches from Kael's throat. Kael moved. He neither retreated nor cried out. His feet shifted slightly apart, his shoulders sank, and his entire body oiled itself, gliding past the claw's trajectory by a hair's breadth. The gale, force, Kai sheared off a strand of his sideburn, but never even grazed his robe. The fatty stared at his mist strike, astonishment flickering across his face. What kind of bizarre movement technique was that? In that instant, insolence, Steward Lai's furious voice boomed. He flashed forward, cutting in front of the fatty. His sleeves billowed, and a soft yet devastating palm force blasted forward. Joran's true essence flared. He crossed in front of Kael in one stride, his stare a glacial weight pinning the fat man in place. The fat man staggered to a halt, then stomped his foot down. Both of you. Get the hell out of my way. That elixir, Pangy will definitely... A weathered, stentorian shout cut in from the stairway. Stop. Torin's white robes fluttered. He'd vanished before. Now he reappeared like smoke. His gaze scraped over the vial, then latched onto Kael, a smile stretched thin across his face. Young friend Gu, that pill is a miracle, but its potency is bleeding away fast. I have a 10,000-year warm jade case. It'll seal the properties tight. Let me hold it for you, just for now. On the Treasure Vault Pavilion's name, I swear. You will not be cheated. Steward Lai and Duran both frowned, already drawing breath to argue, but Kael's eyes had dropped to the vial. The golden pill, the size of a longan and honey-colored, was bleeding smoke. With every wisp it shrank, dried a little. The potency was dying fast. Kael's eyes rose, a cold, sharp curl at the corner of his mouth. Store it. He spun, grabbed Folly's jaw from behind, and tipped the vial hard. Half the pill tumbled free. Its cross-section glowed like molten amber, thick golden light pulsing. Potency erupted as crimson, gold smoke billowing wildly. Folly coughed, choking as the half-pill slid down her throat. The fat man's eyes bulged. You... Torin's hair bristled, a snarl twisting his words. You insolent little... Kael ignored them. He tilted his head back and poured the remaining half into his own mouth. The pill slid down. A searing line of pain tore from his throat to his stomach. The skin on both their necks blazed red, then split into cracks of glaring gold, like magma tearing through parched earth. A heartbeat later, blazing golden flames erupted from inside them. Every pore gushed crimson radiance, flooding the Treasure Vault Pavilion with light like high noon. These were not flames, the soul, light of ancient medicine. They coalesced into two translucent lotus buds, encasing Folly and Kael separately. A vortex of spiritual energy plunged down, a celestial waterfall crashing through the roof, and the void itself gave a deep, muffled thrum. Crack, crack, crack. Acupoints shattered in rapid succession, crisp as breaking glaze. Folly blazed brightest, her young face suddenly sacred, ethereal. She opened her eyes, dazed. A truth-revealing rune flared at the bottom of her pupils, then gone. The hall hummed, jade vials on the shelves trembled and clinked, as if an invisible weight swelled, warping the air itself. Kael grunted, his soul force surged, a wildfire flash expanding, ripping through barrier after barrier, shattering more than a dozen acupoints in one breath. The lotus light faded. Kael let out a breath of stale kai and opened his eyes. His cultivation sat firm at the peak of aperture, opening realm's third stage. Folly had stepped into the sixth stage of pulse opening. That's it. The crowd traded glances, a few sour words already forming on their lips. The fat man's eyes were crimson, as if someone had carved a slice from his heart. His voice cracked with rage. You idiots know nothing. That elixir was never for cultivation. It's a damn soul. Force pill, half a pill, and his soul force just more than doubled. Soul force doubled. The hall went dead silent. Confusion slackened into stupor, then stupor twisted into horror. In the corner, Torin's knuckles whitened. His stare drove into Kael like a poison. Dipped hook, the image of the elixir swallowed whole, searing his chest over and over, his rancor clawing at the edges of his composure. Kael didn't feel it at all. The fat man's words crashed through his skull like thunder. Doubled soul force. He whipped his head around, staring at Folly's face, the golden light not yet gone from her cheeks, his throat locked up tight. If he'd known, he would have poured every last grain down her throat. He said nothing, but the regret hit harder than the spiritual vortex, a dull, brutal blow straight to his chest. Kael was sulking. Beside him, Folly practically glowed vitality, rolled off her in waves, her eyes two burning coals. He cast a sidelong glance. Folly, how do you feel? Young master, her voice shook, breathless. I feel. I've never felt this good in my life. Kael let out a long breath and fell silent. The crowd, though. They had no intention of letting him melt away. A sudden realization rippled through the onlookers. That ironclad certainty he'd shown earlier in front of the profound stone, that wasn't blind luck. Could he actually see right through the thing, know what lay inside? Little brother, a cultivator's voice sliced through, sharp with urgency. One stone left, you opening it or not. Every head whipped toward Kael in unison, a single hungry stare boring into him. His face betrayed nothing. He strode straight to the last profound stone, towering taller than a man, and laid a palm against its gritty surface. He circled it twice, wrapped his curled knuckles against it, and squeezed his eyes shut in fierce concentration, as though feeling for a pulse no one else could sense. The crowd's breathing thinned, the air drew taut. Without a whisper of warning, Kael's expression shattered. Before a single person could twitch, he swept two fingers across his storage ring. Silver light blazed from its surface, like some colossal spectral beast, unfurling a maw to swallow the sky. The profound stone crumpled and warped under that howling pull and vanished with a deep, resonant thrum. No more opening. Kael seized Folly's arm, spun toward the exit, and shoved his way through. Fatty froze, his face draining to paste. Wait, you don't mean. This one's also got. Shut it, Kael's hand slapped over his mouth, his voice a cold whisper like a blade pressed to skin. Nothing at all. I just don't feel like opening it, you coming or not. Right. Fatty caught on fast, jowls trembling. No treasure, absolutely nothing. Move. Not even a ghost would buy that, and Torin believed it least of anyone. Kael had already paid the origin crystals in full. The stone was his, no question. His withdrawal now broke no rule, but Torin stepped forward, heavy and deliberate, venom pooling in his stare. Halt! The command cracked through the air, frost edged and raw enough to scrape skin. Kael's stride faltered. He didn't turn. That profound stone. Don't want to open it. What's inside? Empty. Kael's answer was a slammed door, so final that Torin almost let out a laugh. Too green, too hasty. The harder you try to shake free, the louder it screams. There's a treasure inside that could shake the heavens. Pavilion Master Torin, Steward Lai's face darkened as he stepped between them. What you're doing breaks every rule. A storm churned behind Torin's eyes, missing that pill already gnawed at him, a raw bite of regret. He could not, under any sky, let this profound stone slip through his fingers. He drew a deep breath and crushed every last shred of hesitation. The profound stone. Treasure Vault Pavilion is no longer selling it. Your origin crystals will be returned, in full. No longer selling. Fatty exploded. On what grounds? Snatching back sold goods. You running a back alley racket now? Kael shot a look at Steward Ma, a mocking twist to his lips. Steward Ma had half a mind to slap himself. Torin ignored them completely, his stare locked on Kael, each word dropping like an iron hammer. Name your price. 5 million origin crystals. Kael arched a brow, his tone dripping contempt. You'd pay that. Yes. The word fell like a guillotine blade, no pause, no flicker. A collective hiss swept the hall. Kael's face flickered just a split. Second flash of astonishment, then his lips spat 3 icy words. Still not selling. He yanked Folly forward, one stride from the door. A terrifying boom, Torin's aura erupted. The crushing pressure of the void stride realm slammed down like an invisible tidal wave. The air itself shrieked, warping and buckling. The flagstones beneath their feet couldn't take it. Sharp cracks splintered into a web of fissures, shards skittering outward. Weaker cultivators were hurled back, spines cracking against the walls before they found their footing. Torin's hand lashed out. A claw-shaped shadow tore through the air, wreathed in a gale that clawed at flesh and bone, arcing straight for Kael's skull. You think you walk away? Not a chance. You think I'm standing here for nothing? An ear-splitting cry ripped out at the same instant. Steward Lai's pale face ignited with ferocious resolve. He threw himself bodily in front of Kael and thrust both palms outward. Blood. Red seal patterns flared into existence, blazing like twin sacrificial pyres. Head on collision. Palm force met Klosh Addo in a deafening blast. Shredded spiritual energy ripped outward in a shockwave. Display shelves detonated into splinters. Porcelain and wood rained down in a storm of razor edges. Steward Lai flew backward as if some colossal invisible beast had rammed his chest, his staggering retreat pulverizing the flagstones with every forced step. When he finally wrenched his body to a stop, a thin line of blood traced from the corner of his mouth. Vivid crimson beads slid from his chin, dripping tap. Tap, onto the fractured stone. He was nothing but a spirit-link cultivator. The chasm between him and the void stride realm was a gap no skill could bridge. Steward Lai's face settled into cold ruthlessness. He raised a hand, deliberate and slow, and wiped the blood from his lips.